And thank you, Marcin, for reminding us that today's meeting is being recorded for record-taking purposes and for note-taking. And I will just ask as a common courtesy that when we speak, if we can identify ourselves. We do have a series of votes this morning that we'll be taking, and those votes will be taken by roll call after each action. So with that, I will ask if you'll take the roll call for attendance and confirm that we do have a quorum.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Claudio Gualtieri, Chair.
Here.
Thank you. Grant Ritter.
Here.
Thank you. Carleen Zambetti, on behalf of Commissioner Nancy Navarrete from DMS.
Here.
Thank you. Matthew Brockman. And Thomas McNeil.
Here.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, yes, we do have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. This is Claudio again, and I'll ask at this time that the Access Health CT staff introduce themselves, as well as Whittlesey representatives who are here to present.
Good morning, all. James Michelle, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, everyone. Holly, Director of Finance, Access Health Connecticut.
Good morning, everybody. Susan Ridgeby, Access Health Connecticut, Director of Legal and Governmental Affairs.
Good morning, everyone. This is Glenn Jurgen, Director of Human Resources with Access Health Connecticut.
Mr. Chair, I believe that concludes introductions of the SLT.
Thank you. This is Claudio again. And so now we move to public comment. My understanding is that we received no written public comment ahead of time. I'll pause to see if there's anyone currently in attendance that wishes to make public comment. And if Marcin, once you confirm that no public comment is available, we will move on.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we did not receive any public comments for today's meeting.
All right, great, thank you. That brings us to the next agenda item, which is review and approval of the meeting minutes from our last gathering, which was on June 13th. All of you should have received copies of the draft minutes ahead of this meeting. I hope you had a chance to review. I'll now entertain a motion to approve such minutes as presented.
Yes, hi, this is Grant.
McNeil,
Motion to approve the minutes.
I second it, Tom McNeil.
So Grant Ritter, seconded by Thomas McNeil. Thank you both. Any discussion, amendments, or changes for the draft meeting minutes? Seeing no comment or requested changes, Marcin, can we take a vote on approval?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Claudio Gualtieri.
Yes.
Grant Ritter.
Yes.
Carleen Zambetti.
Yes.
Matthew Brockman. And Thomas McNeil.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to our next agenda item. Claudio here again, and I will just introduce Susan Ridgeby, who is going to, I believe, talk us through and introduce Thomas Goldfuss to walk through the 24 Access Health CT audited financial statements. Susan?
Thank you very much, Claudio. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this meeting today. We have two completed audits by our independent auditors to present to you today. And as Claudio mentioned, Tom Goldfuss is here from Whittlesey, who is now our independent auditor. If you recall from, I think it was the June meeting, we mentioned that every 6 years we are required to change auditors. We're required to do a competitive process every 3 years, and we cannot have the same auditor for more than 6 years pursuant to the quasi-public statute. So we did change auditors this year, and Whittlesey has started as our new independent auditor, and this is a return visit. They were with us for 6 years at the beginning of the exchange. So today we will be covering the audited FY 2024 audited financial statements, and then also the programmatic audit. And the audited financial statements, just as a reminder, these are required pursuant to federal law, ACA, and also pursuant to state law. And then the programmatic audit is a requirement pursuant to the ACA to show, to check our compliance with our statute and regulations as an exchange. So I will turn it over to Tom. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the intro. And once again, my name is Tom Goldfuss, partner with Whittlesey. The document you have in front of us, what we'll outline is the audit objectives and the planning of our audit, the overview of the results. There are required communications that we will discuss. We have that in the form of this presentation, but also in the format of a letter that will get issued at the end of the audit as well. We'll cover significant areas of the audit and estimates, as well as some financial statements highlights, and finally, some current and emerging accounting issues that are relevant to the authority going forward. So the next page is the main part of what we're here to discuss is the audit objectives. We've done our audit, we've completed our audit, and I believe today we are actually issuing the final reports now that we've received the management representation letter. The audit is conducted in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, as well as government auditing standards. Those standards require that we obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. Both of those reports are clean and unmodified, which is the highest level of assurance you're looking for. The government auditing standards report refers specifically to internal controls over financial reporting as well as compliance. So that's a little bit more detailed than a regular audit, and requires us to go into further detail with the internal controls. If there were significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, they would be reported in that report, but there were none to report or discuss further. So all good news there. It also requires that we design our audit based upon the internal controls of the authority. And again, there was no deviations in our plan from what we anticipated doing to what we actually did. As part of our audit planning, we perform risk assessments to determine the testing that we do on the financial items. And during the audit, we're not specifically tasked with finding fraud, but fraud risk is a consideration when we do our audit work. And we're not aware of any fraud or illegal activities or any other non-compliance items that we would be required to report to you. If you can move on to the next page, please. So like I said, we have initial draft of these audit reports. They should be issued today. Again, clean reports. These are for June 30th, 2024, as mentioned previously. One thing at Whittlesey that we do on all of our larger audits is we have an IT control specialist internally, a group of folks that are responsible for helping us with assessing the IT, specifically around the financial reporting system, but also just general controls for the authority. That was clean as well. Actually received good news that it's actually in really good shape with the way things are set up. And I know that those folks have worked with you in the past as well. So all positive news on that front. In terms of completing the audit, there were no difficulties with management or working with management during the audit. In fact, everything went very smoothly and fine. I guess it was almost like the 6 years was nothing to come back and pick this up and continue the audit from where we left off. The knowledge, our audit senior manager returned, so she was with you on day one doing the audit. Her name is Jean Callan. She's on vacation this week. Otherwise, she'd be here. But very positive feedback received from her as far as doing the audit and everything done. And of course, being done on time, always a good thing. There were no uncorrected misstatements or material journal entries as a result of our audit as well. So the numbers that you're seeing when you meet and look at the finances for the authority are an accurate representation of what has been audited. The next slide goes into further required communications. As I mentioned, this also comes in form of a letter addressed to governance at the end of the audit. The main takeaway here, though, are that the accounting policies have been applied consistently from year to year and that they're appropriate. There were no changes in policies for the year as well. When it comes to auditing estimates, we looked at underlying assumptions and factors used to develop those estimates. and found those to be reasonable in relationship to the financial statements as a whole. I think I mentioned previously, no instances of fraud or illegal activities were identified. No material weaknesses were identified. And finally, we confirm to you that we've maintained our independence with respect to the authority under all relevant professional and regulatory standards. So very important to note that there as well. The next required communication is around required supplementary information, or RSI. The RSI is primarily the management discussion and analysis. We don't actually issue our audit opinion on this this part of the financial statements, but we are required to make inquiries and do certain procedures, especially to make sure that these numbers tie out to the financial statements, that nothing in that document is contradictory or incorrect. But because it's limited as procedures, there's no opinion on it, but we'll say that obviously we do review that and make sure that if we are aware of any errors, that we would identify that and correct it with management. As the next slide, wanted to go over some of our significant audit areas and give you an insight in some of the audit work that's being performed on these areas. The first one is cash and cash equivalents. We confirm 100% of the cash on hand as well as STIF accounts. In addition to reviewing the reconciliations and auditing those reconciliations. With accrued liabilities, we've gotten management reconciliations and support for accrued expenses by vendor. The main idea there is to make sure that these liabilities have been recorded in the proper period, being June 30th, 2024. And then we also select sampling disbursements after June 30th to verify that those amounts were recorded in the proper period. With marketplace assessments, and I apologize, it looks like when this transferred over, the formatting is a little bit off here, but so I'm not sure if that's our end or maybe just putting in the board package here. But we've calculated, we recalculated assessments based on the quarterly amounts and compared to management reconciliations, and then also sampled various health insurer invoices as well to make sure it's accurate there. For expenses, we've sampled disbursements made during the fiscal year, agreed those amounts to invoice amounts, and then also to make sure they were properly approved, charged to the correct general ledger accounts, and then paid from the proper accounts as well. All of this, of course, is just a part of what we do. We do a lot of analytics as well and ratios to make sure that things look reasonable. But these being more significant areas, want to go into some of the further detail of what we do. Finally, in addition to the audit, we do an audit we do a programmatic audit, which is several steps and requirements that are related to federal regulations. And that was a clean report as well. So there were no, just like the financial statements were clean and unmodified, that report is also a clean report with no issues identified. The next page are the significant accounting estimates. There's two material estimates in there, or two main financial statement estimates that are material. One is a subscription based liability for IT arrangements, and the other being the lease liability. Both of those are similar in the fact that what we do is read the contracts and determine that the inputs are proper and make sense and the calculations are done properly. And then looking at the underlying assumptions, which is really the interest rate or the discount rate being used, to make sure that that's consistent and that it's reasonable in relation to the environment. So those are estimates. They're not a lot could go wrong, I guess, on those, but we do look at those. These are not new. These aren't new standards to implement these. These were standards that happened over the last several years. But we're basically making sure that new agreements are being considered and that the methodology is consistent from year to year. The next two slides are some financial statement highlights. These are directly from the audited statements, and they are summarized and rounded in thousands. But you ended the year, June 30th, at $42.3 million. Again, these are numbers that I assume you've seen already. Net position for the authority was about $32.2 million at the end of the year. Very consistent from year to year, plenty of cash on hand, cash and cash equivalents. That includes the SIP accounts of over $28 million. And really the only change to this position is related to the next page. So if you move on to the statement of activities here, it's the results of the year that's impacted the balance sheet the most. Overall, the net position decreased $2.8 million. So that's the, you know, in a for-profit sense, that would be the net loss for the year of 2.8. Total operating expenses, or total operating revenues, I apologize, are up around 10%. The expenses, though, are also increased for the prior year. The main driver in that, the two main drivers in the expense increases are wages and benefits, and then depreciation and amortization. Wages and benefits were up about 9% year over year, whereas depreciation and amortization expense was up about 1.3 million, which equates to about a 32% increase. I'd say it's a little, the composition of expenses is a little bit unique to you because depreciation and amortization is a significant expense for the authority. It's really because of the amount of software and other assets that are needed to run the authority, to do what you're doing. And you know, it's a lot of capital outlay up front, and then over the use of these capital outlays, that depreciation and amortization is recognized as expense from year to year. But again, hopefully I'm not explaining anything that you don't already know. So again, about $2.9 million decrease in that position for the current year. And a final piece of information we want to go over, and of course, be here for any questions or clarify anything afterwards, there's about 4 accounting standards that are effective for you. 3 rather that are upcoming. 1 was current in the current year. None of these updates, I believe, would require any material changes to the authority. The last 2, GASB 102 and GASB 103, are more on a narrative side, I would say, for footnote disclosure and MD&A disclosure. GASB 101 is about compensated absences. That standard could be a little bit tricky as we've started to go through that, but I don't think it would be material to the authority or anything of concern or note to go over in much detail. We will work with the authority to make sure that's implemented. That's technically effective right now for this fiscal year we're in. So the fiscal year ends at June 30th, 2025. But we've been through this and believe we can help as needed to make sure that this gets implemented properly. But again, it should not result in a material, it shouldn't have to result in a material change to the authority, depending on maybe some options that or approaches that we can take in that. I'll echo that again, that for a first year, really a first year audit, even though we did do this 6 years ago, everything did go smooth. We received information timely, and by all accounts, a pleasure to work with the accounting and finance team that you have internally. And I'll yield back and be here for, answer any questions that anybody has about the audit or the finances.
Thank you, Claudio, for that presentation, the overview, and the clean audit report, which is always good news. Do members of the committee have any questions? Seeing none, Marcin, I believe our action item here is to take a vote to approve. Is that correct? Or do you want to do them all at the end?
Mr. Chair, is my understanding that we could take 2 votes at this time regarding the fiscal year 2024 AHCT audited financial statements, and the second vote would be for the fiscal year 2024 programmatic auditing report.
Okay, so we'll take those as 2 separate motions?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I will first entertain a motion to accept the FY 2024 Access Health CT audited financial statements as presented. Do I have such motion?
Hi, this is Grant. So moved.
Grant moved. Second?
Tom McNeil, second.
Thank you, Tom. Motion's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Claude de Gaultieri.
Yes.
Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Caroline Zambetti,
Yes.
Matthew Brockman, and Thomas McNeil.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next, then, I would entertain a motion to approve the FY 2024 programmatic audit report as was just presented. Do I have such motion?
Sure. This is Grant again. Motion to approve the problematic audit.
Thank you. A second?
Tom
This
McNeil,
is
second.
Carleen Zambetti. I'll second.
Carleen, thank you. We got a different one there. That's good. Mix it up. Motion is properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion, questions, or comments on the programmatic audit report for FY 2024? Seeing none, we could move to a vote. Marcin?
Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes.
Grant Ritter,
Yes.
Caroline Zambetti,
Yes.
Matthew Brockman, and Thomas McNeil.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, Claudio Gualtieri again here, moving us on to the next agenda item, which is our SMART tool. And we're going to get a report from Susan Richby on an update from the state-based marketplace annual reporting tool, which is known as SMART. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much. And this is the third piece, if you will, on these federal and state requirements to verify the exchange's program integrity, compliance, and the audits that we just presented, I'll talk about are actually part of one of the components of the SMART. So the ACA requires state-based marketplaces to keep accurate accounting of all of our receipts, activities, and expenditures, and to monitor and report to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on all of our exchange-related activities, and then to complete an annual report and to engage an independent auditor, as we've done here with Whittlesley, to perform annual independent financial and programmatic audits to ensure compliance with regulations and standards. CMS developed an annual reporting tool for exchanges in 2015 to combine all of these requirements into one easier format, if you will. So the SMART includes eligibility and enrollment policy, a report by the state-based marketplace on its ability to collect and submit standardized performance monitoring data related to qualified health plans and the tax credits and CSR, cost sharing reduction, eligibility determinations that are done in our system, enrollments, disenrollments, and special enrollment periods. And then the two audits that we just presented, the financial and programmatic audits, are also a component of that. And then ensuring that we comply with all of the exchange requirements and program integrity. And then finally, the SMART finishes with an attestation of completion. So and the SMART is done a little bit differently than these audits, which are done on our fiscal years. The SMART is done on a calendar year, a plan year. So the last SMART that was filed in May, on May 31st of 2024, was our SMART for plan year 2023. And on September 10th, I'm happy to report that CMS issued its summary of observations and action items for Access Health Connecticut on our SMART, and they did not identify any action items for this SMART filing. So we were very, very pleased about that. And I will just note, as Tom was talking about Whittlesey's prior experience with us, back in the early days of the exchange, the programmatic audit was a requirement and has been in the ACA regulations, but there really wasn't much content from CMS on how it should be done. And Whittlesey actually created a really great format for us back in those early days for our first programmatic audit. And once we filed it, CMS was very impressed and it kind of became the best practice. So I just wanted to put in a little plug that we're very grateful for that. And it's worked really well for us over these years. So if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Susan. Great overview, very succinct and good coverage. Glad everything is looking good. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, I think our last item is a motion to adjourn. Very efficient meeting today, everyone. Thank you. Grant, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, sure. Motion to adjourn. This is Grant.
All right, the second, I'll second it. And I think we need a roll call on that. So Marcin, please take the roll.
Claudio Gualtieri,
Yes,
Ron Ritter,
Yes.
Arlene Zambetti,
Yes.
Matthew Brockman,
Yes.
and Thomas McNeil.
Yes.
Thank you.
we are adjourned. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you
Okay,
all.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.